Hey folks, how's it going? Rub Gaming here, back to the video. Today's episode, we're taking a look at Arms Warrior for Season 2 of the War Within, patch 11.15. If you guys want to follow along, I'm going to leave a link in the description of the video. Just press that link, it'll take you out to this web page, and you can just kind of follow along with us as we kind of scroll through here. We're going to go through the whole page, and this is where you're going to find like the import and everything for talents. So make sure you check it out. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We are currently A tier, so we'll bring up Archon really quick. You can see they're here at the top of A tier, and they're currently quite a bit better than their counterpart Fury, which we already did a guide on. If you want to watch Fury Warrior, you can check that out on our page. But Arms Warrior is in a very good spot right now. We can scroll down here to DPS. We can sort by DPS, and we can see they are currently, I'd say top 15 in terms of overall DPS. I think it's technically 17, so right behind Demo Lock. And where you'll see a lot of value out of something like an Arms Warrior is what we're just going to get into right now. In terms of the pros and cons, is the battle shout that they bring. So that's a lot of the reason that you would bring a warrior in general, and they're typically ran with other physical damage comps. So something like we're seeing a lot of Assassination Rogue, a lot of Feral Druid being run with them. We also see some Unholy DK with Arms Warrior up there at the top. So overall, their numbers might not be like the most competitive in terms of overall damage. They do bring battle shout, and they fit specific compositions extremely well, especially if you run something like a monk. You can double up with a battle shout and a mystic touch, and it's just really going to boost your overall group's damage. So also, we have a pretty good damage profile. We don't really fall off necessarily from single target to 2-target cleave to 4 or 5 targets. As the target count does get a little bit higher, though, we do kind of fall off a little bit. You can see on our cleave, deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. But we're really getting specific dungeons, something like a Theater of Pain, where sometimes you're pulling only like 3 to 4 mobs, and a lot of that's going to be due to your sweeping strikes. So for 15 seconds, your single target damaging abilities hit 1 additional target for 75% damage. And then we also have our deep wounds as well, which is just going to be good. It doesn't matter the target count. Deep wounds is just going to provide you some of that consistent damage. We got our battle shout that we just talked about, as well as rallying cry. And then we're also pretty good against magical damage, pretty similar to something like, I would say something like a Death Knight. You know, they have their anti-magic shell, but we have our spell reflection, which I need to add the tooltip here, but it's on a pretty low cooldown. And not only does it reflect the spell, but it also reduces your magical damage taken as well. So I'll try to get the tooltip added in there at some point. Some of the cons, we don't bring a Lust or a B-Res. And Battle Shout honestly does not really make up for that unless you have a very specific comp. So it is a little bit harder to get in groups as a warrior just in general, unless you're tanking, of course. We talked about this already, more designed in physical damage compositions than magical, and then we also don't have any sort of an immunity. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about talents. So we are running Colossus Tree currently. So we are taking Demolish, which is on a 45-second cooldown. This is a channeled spell, but while you're channeling, you're immune to stuns, knockbacks, and force movement effects, so it makes it a little bit more forgiving. And then you can also block, parry, dodge while using this channeled effect. Now, down here at our bottom node, we're using Dominance of the Colossus. So our Colossal Might now stacks up to 10 times. If you're not sure what that is, that's right above here. So Colossal Might increases the damage of your next Demolish by 10%, stacking up to 5 times. So how do we get Colossal Might? Well, that's going to be through our Mortal Strike, as well as our Cleave, but the Cleave has to hit 3 or more targets. Now let's go back down here to Dominance of the Colossus. So enemies affected by Demolish take up to 10% more damage from you, and deal up to 10% less damage to you for 10 seconds based on the number of stacks of Colossal Might consumed by your Demolish. So we'll get to that a little bit more once we get into the actual rotation, but just kind of know the synergy, right, between your Demolish, your Colossal Might, and then your Dominance of the Claws. All right, so again, you do not want to Colossal Might, or excuse me, you do not want to Demolish without high stacks on your Colossal Might. Okay, now let's get into some of our core tree over here on the right. So starting at the top, obviously we got Mortal Strike. 6-second cooldown, does a whole bunch of damage, costs 30 rage, reduces healing on the target by 50%. Not that big of a deal, really, a Mythic plus, but just know that it does reduce healing. Right below that, we have our Overpower and our 12-second cooldown. You can see that we get 2 charges of this. So this is going to be one of our core rotational abilities. Just know it exists for now. We'll get more into it on the rotation stuff. We have Die by the Sword on a 1.5 minute cooldown. Defensive, increases our parry chance by 100%, reduces all damage we take by 30% for 8 seconds. Another core talent that we're running is right here in the center of the tree, Anger Management. So every 20 rage that we spend on attacks reduces the remaining cooldown on our Colossus Smash, Blade Storm, and Ravager by 1 second. So as we're using our abilities, spending rage, some of our key cooldowns are going to be getting their cooldown reduced by 1 second as we spend that rage, right? So this is really good because this takes our Colossus Smash, which we've not talked about yet, from about a 45-second cooldown to somewhere between a 20 and 30-second cooldown. So here's Colossus Smash, 45-second cooldown. Like we said, that was more likely less than 30, but smashes the enemy's armor, dealing a whole bunch of attack power, physical damage, and increasing damage you deal to them by 30% for 10 seconds. So that's very key. And that has synergy with a couple other talents. So that has synergy with In for the Kill as well as Test of Might. We're just going to cover In for the Kill since that's what we're running at the moment. So Colossus Smash increases your haste by 10% or 20% if the target is below 35% health. So this will last for the duration of Warbreaker or Colossus Smash. Now we're not talking about Warbreaker yet. So Warbreaker is over here and this will replace your Colossus Smash. So this basically turns your Colossus Smash into an AOE ability, which is great for Mythic Plus. Now going further down the tree, we have our Ravager on a 1.5 minute cooldown. This is just going to kind of throw like a whirlwind of blades in a area that you target. And this is also going to generate 10 rage each time it deals damage. Okay, there's nothing else too crazy. I mean, your cleave is over here on the right on a 3-second cooldown. Talk about that a little bit in the rotational section. And then we also have Exhilarating Blows. We have a couple talents in our tree that's going to allow you to reset, just reset the cooldown on like a specific ability. So Cleave and Mortal Strike have a chance to reset themselves. I believe we have a talent in here for Overpower to reset somewhere. Oh, here it is, Battle Lord. Overpower has a chance to reset the cooldown on Mortal Strike as well. So that'll be something you'll have some procs to kind of react to in your rotation. This is another that's pretty nice. We do have a decent amount of sustain as Arms Warrior through Fueled by Violence. So you're healed for 85% of the damage dealt by our deep wounds, which is our mastery. It does a whole bunch of damage. So that gives us a little bit of tankiness. We're also a plate class. But I think for the most part, I think we covered everything here in the arms tree. On the warrior tree, we are running Avatar. This will be a part of our main cooldown window. And then when Avatar is active through Blade Master's Torment, we'll actually get Sweeping Strikes for 8 seconds as well. So you could just go into your Avatar and then go straight into your AOE rotation. And we get a small cooldown reduction on our cleave as well to make sure that that's ready to go. And then Thunderous Roar is also another pretty big cooldown on 45-second window, and this is going to apply a bleed. So we kind of got two cooldown windows that we're working with, 1.5 minutes and 45 seconds. That's similar between both Arms and Fury. Here's the spell reflection that we were talking about earlier in the video. And then we also have a little bit more utility through our Shockwave and our Rallying Cry as well. So Rallying Cry is going to give a little bit of health to our party members, and then Shockwave is going to be like an AoE stun for us for some Mythic Plus utility. Man, we do have a lot of other stuff up here. I think that's about all I'm going to cover, though. I think most of the stuff is pretty straightforward. Oh, I actually did lie. There is one more thing that I want to talk about in AoE. So if you are running Thunderclap and Rend, your Thunderclap will apply Rend to 5 nearby targets. So this is something that you will want to pay attention to in your multi-target. This is one of your highest priorities. This is right behind your cleave, which will apply our deep wounds, and then right after that, you're going to Thunderclap to get those Rends ticking. Again, when we get to the multi-target, we'll kind of cover some of that stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the rotational stuff. So let's go down, see where we're at here to the single target. So we have 3 different priorities. We have an execute priority, we have a single target priority, and then we have our multi-target priority. So I'll talk about the execute priority last. Let's just go ahead and start with the single target. So main priority, start of any fight, is you want to apply your bleeds. So Rend and Thunderous Roar, you want to get those up. And then from there, we want to kind of prep some of our main cooldowns so that our fillers and our Mortal Strikes will do a whole bunch of damage, right? So our Avatar and our Warbreaker, we're going to send those very early in our rotation, right? Because they beef up the damage of our other abilities, right? We want to stack the 20% from Avatar, we want to stack that 30% from Warbreaker and put that into our next few Mortal Strikes. So we want to Mortal Strike to get that on cooldown, and then we want to send our Demolish directly after that. Now, one thing that I did kind of gloss over on Demolish is if we go back to our talents here, we come back to Dominance of the Colossus. If you're sitting at those 10 max stacks, the cooldown is going to be reduced by 2 seconds each time you gain a stack that would put you over the cap until Demolish is off of cooldown. So you don't really have wasted stacks. You're going to get to 10 stacks pretty quickly, but all those additional stacks are going to be funneled into CDR on your Demolish. So just kind of keep that in mind. So back to our Demolish, we'll execute with Sudden Death probably need to take that out of the guide, right? Because we're not running sudden death at the moment. And then from there, we will overpower, and then we will just slam as our filler if there's nothing else to prep. Now let's quickly talk about multi-target, and then we'll get into the execute priority. So pretty similar to single target, we'll cleave right off the bat to get our deep wounds ticking, thunderclap to get our rend ticking, and then we will thunderous roar to get that bleed ticking. So there's 3 bleeds that we're going to apply right off the bat. It's going to be at both single target and AOE, and then from there we'll go into our avatar. So if we remember from earlier, avatar will grant sweeping strikes, but we get sweeping strikes right after that to get that they'll basically stack with each other. So you can get more uptime on your initial sweeping strikes by stacking the 2 together. And then we can Warbreaker, and then from there we will cleave. And you might notice that we just lost a spell in here. We had Blade Storm up. We're not running Blade Storm at the moment. That's a typo I had on the guide. I apologize. I just removed it. That was our step 8. It did not affect anything up here in terms of priority. Just all this got moved up to a level. So Demolish becomes our number 8 in priority. But we cleave after the Avatar and the Warbreaker to get cleave ticking on cooldown. And then while that's ticking on cooldown, we will use our Demolish at 10 stacks of that Colossal Might. This should happen every single time, so it's not really something you have to worry about too much. You'll stack that to 10 very quickly. And then from there, we will Mortal Strike on cooldown, execute, and everything here is during our sweeping strikes. So if Mortal Strike is available, you'll use it. If Execute's available, you'll use it. If Overpower's available, you'll use it during your sweeping strikes. That's kind of like a small window, right? And all of those sweeping strikes come from our avatar, and then when we popped it up here earlier in the priority list. And then from here, you'll maintain your bleeds with Thunderclap, and then just Mortal Strike and Overpower. All this right here is really, I don't want to say it's filler, but just use whatever pops up on the cooldown. If multiple things are available at once, then you refer to the priority, but really, you're just kind of using all, this is just kind of like your filler rotation. But if Mortal Strike and Execute are both up, which do you pick? Right, you pick Mortal Strike. Okay, let's jump up to the Execute priority. So we are running improved Execute, so our Execute does not have any sort of cooldown associated with it. And this Execute priority is mainly for single target that you're looking at here, because remember from multi-target, we have Executes already built into the multi-target priority, and we do have some Execute built into the single target priority as well, but this is assuming that we're running Sudden Death. And since we're not running Sudden Death in this build, I think what I'm going to do is come in here and just remove this step. And then once we get into Execute phase, this will be the priority list that you follow rather than this list, essentially. Okay, so here's the updated list. I removed Execute from single target priority, so this makes a little bit more sense now. So once we do get into the Execute phase, we're going to use Sweeping Strikes, and we can funnel our Executes into that Sweeping Strikes. Your bleed should already be up on the target. If they're not, go ahead and refresh them. From there, you can Thunderous Roar into a Ravager, into your Avatar, and it's going to be the same setup as all the other ones. Avatar into Warbreaker. We'll use our Execute to refresh our Juggernaut. This is going to be like a stacking effect. It's going to increase the damage of our Execute. Another thing that we're not running, but some people might run it, so I'm going to leave it in here. You want to Mortal Strike with, if you are running Executioner's Precision, you want to Mortal Strike at this phase with 2 stacks of Executioner's Precision. So it's going to be like a beefed up Mortal Strike. Step 8, we're going to Overpower with Opportunist. And not sure if we talked about this yet, but when Overpower does get its cooldown refreshed, your next Overpower is going to do a little bit more damage. From here, we'll Execute at greater than 20 Rage and then Overpower. So if you notice, Slam has been completely replaced in the Execute priority and is not used as a filler. Instead, it's just basically replaced with higher priority Executes. Okay, going into Consumables, we're running Flask of Alchemical Chaos, Tempered Potion, Agari Healing Potion, Mana Oil, Crystallized Augment Rune. For our Feast, the Sushi Special, Culminating Blasphemite, and then a Deadly Emerald. For the Haste, we'll talk about that here in a bit once we get into the stat priority section. But very standard stuff. We're seeing pretty much the same setup for almost every single DPS specialization right now. Going into the Enchants, we're running Greater Rune of the Void Ritual. Again, very standard across most DPS specs. We are running Avoidance on our Cloak. But on our bracers, we're not running Avoidance, we're running Speed. And then on our boots, we're running Stamina. We're running Main Stat on the chest. And then we're running Defender's Armor Kit on our legs for that increased strength and agility. And then we are running a double Critical Strike on our rings. And we're also seeing this for a lot of DPS specializations on the Embellishments, just running 2x Dawn Thread Linings. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the tier set as well. We've not discussed that yet. So the tier set is not something that we need to actively think about. It doesn't change our rotation or anything. It's mostly passive. So just to read it out here, your abilities have a chance to begin a winning streak, increasing the damage of Overpower by 5%, stacking up to 10 times. Overpower has a 15% chance to end your winning streak. So when your winning streak ends, you gain 2% haste, and your Mortal Strike and cleave damage increase by 2% per stack of winning streak you had for 12 seconds. So if you had 5 seconds left times the 2%, that'd be 10%. Okay, taking a look at the tier set bonus, just the percent damage gain. We go down here to the bottom, Arms Warrior, and we go all the way over to the right. You can see this percent gain column. And what this is doing is this is comparing the damage increase from last season's tier set to this season's tier set. So going from last season's to this season's going to be about a 11% gain. And, you know, it's pretty average with most of the other specializations. It's nothing crazy like a Fire Mage, but it is, you know, I would say it's one of the better tier sets. And, you know, actually looking at this, I'm not sure if I'd go that far to say it's one of the better. I'd say it's about middle of the pack, to be honest. I mean, look, just be glad you're not Devastation Evoker down here with that 1% gain. But definitely an upgrade to go from Season 1 to Season 2. We've talked about these general tips already, but if you want to review some of those on your own, go ahead. And then let's go ahead and get down here to stat priority. So we got Critical Strike as our main secondary stat. We're also running, I guess we're not running, it's our Mastery Deep Wounds. But if you didn't catch that from earlier in the guide, Deep Wounds is going to do a whole bunch of damage for us. It also heals through one of our talents, so going to be relatively strong for us. But the main secondary stat that we are focused on is our Critical Strike. And a lot of that is going to be due to the Impale talent here. So Critical Strike damage from your ability is increased by 10%. So what I've done here is I've just typed in the word Critical Strike, and you can see all the different things that light up that scale with Critical Strike. So long story short, it just synergizes with our kit very well. It's going to be right next to Haste. And Haste is pretty good because we have our Warbreaker or our Colossus Smash window that we're kind of working in. And the more Haste, the lower the GCD, the more abilities that we can squeeze into that window. So Haste is very good for us. And you can see this comment here, often trading priority with Critical Strike. So these are the main two stats that you're going to be focused on. Having more Haste than Critical Strike is not going to affect your damage that much. Number 4 in priority is the Deep Wounds that we just talked about. The problem with this is it's its own ability almost. So by stacking a whole bunch of Mastery, it's not going to make like our Colossus Smash stronger. It's not going to make our, like if we're running Blade Storm or something, for example, it's not going to make those stronger. So it doesn't buff a lot of our big damage spenders. So even though that a lot of those do apply Deep Wounds, it doesn't make the damage coming out of them higher, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm kind of ranting at this point. And then finally here at the bottom, versatility. Going to be nice, especially in higher Mythic Plus keys when you're taking more damage. Can give you that flat damage boost as well as reduces incoming damage. So yeah, guys, that's the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. See you guys in the next one.